Okay, I'd like to just welcome everyone. Thanks for joining. And sorry, my Zoom went away. Okay. I'm Chris Clepper. I am the Director of Art Technology New England, which is an affiliate of Boston Cyberarts. The ATNE mission has been to basically kind of create and support a community of artists in the Boston area who use basically any sort of technology, really, either in their work or commenting on, the modern technology. In the past, we've done this as in-person, informal salons, and often in support of shows that are at CyberArts. And we've kind of pivoted into adding these virtual sessions like tonight. Tonight's discussion is entitled "The Feminist Future of Art," and it features the artists of the Feminist Future Collective, and their show called Currency is up at the gallery right now, and it's going to continue through this weekend. And so this will be your last, if you haven't seen it, this will be your last opportunity to see it. The gallery is open Friday, Saturday, and Sunday from noon to 6, and it's located at the Green Street T station, right connected to the actual station, on the MBTA Orange Line, so it's quite easy to get to. A little background on CyberArts and the gallery. So CyberArts started off as a biennial festival in Boston. It was founded by George Fifield, who kind of created it to showcase the work of people who were using basically the most kind of advanced, I guess, kind of the advanced thinking of implementing, technology in their artwork. And the festival continued until 2011, and then basically shifted into the current gallery location shortly thereafter. And one of the great things about it is the gallery still kind of maintains this idea of having like a festival, but in this case, it's year-round. And so one of the things that the gallery does do is opens the space up to other organizations like the Feminist Futurist Collective to present their work. And it's a great way to get different perspectives outside of just outside of the typical programming that the gallery would do. So it's great that we have this show. And I don't want to summarize what they're going to talk about, so I guess I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to skip to a couple of notes that I have here. First of all, Karen Menino and A.K. Liesenfeld, who actually who are part of the collective, but are not here tonight. They're taking part in Boston Fashion Week, which is going on this week, actually. And so their augmented reality work will be presented as part of Boston Fashion Week. After the Currency show closes, the next show at CyberArts will be Lina Maria Giraldo's Data para Todos. I don't have too many details on what this show will be, other than I believe it's working with students and dealing with climate. That opens on Saturday, October 29th, and runs through Sunday, December the 18th. And that's really all I have to say for the moment. I'm going to turn this over to Christina, and she and the rest of the artists will introduce themselves and present the Feminist Future of Art. So thank you all again for attending. And if you haven't seen the show, again, this is the last weekend to see it, and make sure you do.
Thank you, Chris. All right, everybody. I am part of the panel, but also hosting, moderating, and tech support. So bear with me as I just try to spotlight the right people for everybody. So welcome. I'm sure more people will trickle in, and that's great. So we're part of the Feminist Futurist collective. Our group started in 2020. Carolyn Wirth and Karen Menino had a show at Boston Center for Arts in 2020, right around the time the pandemic started, and made this collective. It kept going. It's been a really great artist group for all of us. We have a humanifesto that I don't have in front of me. I kind of wish I did. But our group is we're called the Feminist Futurists. So obviously we're focused on feminism and futurism and the intersection of those, and also just intersectional feminism in general. We really want that to be the focus of our group and our work together. So our work isn't necessarily usually about technology. Obviously, that's part of futurism, but that's not necessarily what we focus on in general. But we did focus on it a bit for this show called Currency at Boston Cyberarts Gallery, which we're very excited about. So the way we're going to do it today, I'm going to introduce the four of us from the Feminist Futures Collective who are here tonight. There are a few of us who are not here. We're also kind of a fluid group, so this is just who the group is now, but we've certainly had members before and hope to have more in the future. But I'll introduce everybody, and then I'll let you know kind of how it's going to go. We want this discussion to involve people, all of you who are attending. So we're going to make time for discussion for all of us. So let me introduce my people here. 1 second. All right, so I'm going to introduce us individually, and then I'll share the themes that we're going to talk about, and then we'll get started. All right, so here tonight we have Carolyn Wirth, Marjorie Kaye, Freedom Baird, and myself, Christina Balch. We are part of the Feminist Futures Collective, and we're exhibiting. We all have work at the exhibit right now at Boston Cyberarts. Feminist Futurist members who are not here but are in the show and have some awesome work to check out are Karen Menino, A.K. Liesenfeld, and Nancy Hayes, who some of them are on, so might join in. Carolyn Wirth uses the figure to describe people historically unrepresented due to gender bias. She creates portraits of unseen women, frequently using the objects they made: clothing, books, gardens. Wirth's practice encompasses sculpture, installation, and photography to describe a culture which normalizes suppression of the feminine and the destruction of the natural world. She grew up in New Jersey and lives near Boston, Massachusetts. Thank you, Carolyn. And I'm going to spotlight everyone once we get through the intros. Marjorie Kaye is a visual artist currently based in North Adams in the Berkshires. Although primarily a painter working with gouache, she has also explored her wild, unruly, yet precise compositions in wood as well. She is the director of Galatea Fine Art in Boston's SOA Art and Design District, in addition to her art practice, and has had extensive exhibitions and has been awarded grants from the Provincetown Art Museum and the Massachusetts Cultural Council. And Freedom Baird is a multidisciplinary artist exploring the interconnection between humans and nature. Freedom's work addresses systems and society and often includes performance and viewer participation. She holds master's degrees from the Media Lab at MIT and the Massachusetts College of Art and Design, and has exhibited recently at the Center for Maine Contemporary Art and the Fuller Craft Museum. And I am Christina Balch. I'm a multidisciplinary artist, producer, and technologist. My work explores perceptions of self through digital technology and data. And I do just want to mention all of us on the panel, our pronouns are she, her. But if anybody else, you know, when you're speaking, if you want to tell us your pronouns, please feel free. Okay, so the way that we're going to do this is, can you all see my screen? So we have some, thanks, Freedom. We have some questions and themes that we're going to focus on. They're pretty broad because we want to be able to tease out things that, you know, just go into different directions as we're talking, depending on the conversation. But we're going to do 25 minutes for each of these themes. We have an hour and a half time slot, but we want to have conversation for each of the themes. So we're going to go about 25 minutes for each theme or question, and we'll talk maybe 15 minutes for our group, the Feminist Futurists, and then open it up to everybody for the last 10 minutes of that time slot. So we're going to do that with 3 different themes. How do we, as artists, approach technology from a feminist perspective? The second one is, what is our visionary future of public art and monuments? And third, how do we perceive value? And how do we want to change the way art and objects are valued in society? So those are our questions. Let me see. I will pull that up every once in a while just so that we all remember what we're talking about. Did I forget anything, guys, or you want to get started? Let's get started. All right, so our first question, here's the group. Here's Marjorie. All right, can you guys see the 4 of us? Awesome. All right, so the first question is, how do we as artists approach technology from a feminist perspective? And yes, Marjorie, I would love if you kicked us off.
Yeah, first of all, I want to thank you, Feminist Futurist Group, and everybody who's come to see us here this evening. And I have to say that I have learned more about technology and its relationship to art in the last 3 months than I have for my entire life. I am overjoyed to be part of this collective. The women in this collective are absolutely forward-thinking visionaries, and it's just an honor to be included. Thank you so much. I saw a video a few years ago that addressed this very question about a feminist view of technology and how things change in the future. And what I walked away with is that right now there is an imbalance that there between male and female energy, you know, as far as technology is concerned, that the nurturing aspect, the warmth, the human-centeredness is for some reason, people don't associate technology with these qualities, with the yin qualities. And I think that once there's a balance that's established through the infiltration of more women into these aspects of technology and study and visionary qualities, that the balance will take this technology and make it more person-centered, so that not only will the visual component of technology open up and become more dispersed as far as what's possible, because if you're looking at things from a very rigid point of view and you're not allowing for any flux, and you had talked about fluidity, then it puts a limitation. You know, like somebody might have an idea to paint with lasers, or, you know, I mean, it's endless what could be done. And if there's a rigidity in place, if there's a structure in place that doesn't allow for that kind of creative energy, even if it fails, you know, to exist, then there's an imbalance. Then, you know, you can't go forward. And also you can't utilize technology for the good of all, you know, to make human surfaces more accessible. I mean, it goes on and on, you know. I think to conclude what I'm saying, that there needs to be a balance of energies.
Great. Freedom, I wonder if you could play off.
Well, I just want to echo Marjorie's welcome to everyone. Thank you so much for being here. And I think, you know, if you have any sort of clarifying questions along the way, jump in and ask those too, because we're not a huge group, so I think that's going to be possible. Also want to thank Christina for organizing us tonight, and thank you, Chris, for the introduction, and thank you to Allison, who I think is here for you know, for our cyber arts experience. I think, you know, my answer to the question of how do I approach technology from a feminist perspective is any way I possibly can. And it puts me in a little bit of almost combative mindset, because, you know, as a young person, when I was showing an interest in technology, there was very little room for me to express that and explore that as a girl. And I was really lucky to have family members who didn't care, you know, didn't care about gender, and if you were interested in something, you could pursue that interest. And they were the role models I saw daily. But, you know, in all the environments I was in, school environment, summer camp environment, there was sort of a stigma almost around wanting to pursue an interest in technology. So that was something to constantly hold out against and push back against. And I think sometimes that was exhausting, but over time, you know, as we mature, we learn how to take the energy of our opponents and turn it into our own energy. It's like Taekwondo. So I think somewhere along the way, I learned to do that. I also think, Chris, I'm really sorry. I'm gonna point out something that you said. This is not about you, but it's about the perceived norm. You said that our group was welcome to show at Boston Cyberarts space as a way of welcoming something that's not part of your typical programming, and that our group falls outside of that. And I'm so happy that you welcomed us to this space, and hopefully you'll invite us back. But I also think, why? You know, why are we outside some perceived norm? So that's just a little example of me pushing back, hopefully respectfully, and with humor. But yeah, so my journey as an artist whose work is informed by technology and sometimes expressed through technology has been one of sort of struggle, and then also the excitement of exploration and innovation, and you know, doing that all very collaboratively with many other women exploring those things as well, and just many other people as well. So yeah.
Thanks, Freedom. Carolyn, do you have anything you want to say on that?
Well, I'm very grateful to Freedom for bringing up that unintentional context that Chris used, and I don't mean to pick on Chris at all, but it's something that we as women have become acutely aware of, you know, if not hypersensitive to in our day-to-day doings, you know, the way the different presentations that I listen to, for example, different presentations about technology by technologists often express, you know, surprise and wonderment when a woman in the field has made significant accomplishments. So that's just something that springs to mind for me. And that exists in the art world as well, you know, not here's a person exploring different arenas of expression, but gosh, here's a, you know, a woman who's doing this, you know, just the very surprise that greets your work can be interesting to think about.
Yeah, and for the theme of, you know, how do we as artists approach technology from a feminist perspective, I think it really depends on what your definition of feminism is, right? So I think we've all experienced some sort of, you know, gender bias for sure, especially in relation to technology. But I also want to mention that for me, especially, like a feminist perspective is an intersectional feminism. And so you're getting a little sense of our discussions when we meet in, you know, when we have our little, we meet up on Zoom a lot as a group. And I'm constantly harping on the non-binariness of gender, and how the gender binary is totally just exaggerated by technology right now in a way that really bothers me and pisses me off, because it's not necessary. It doesn't have to be like that. But the binary, I mean, you can get into like, oh, the code is binary, da, 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 but the algorithms are biased because people are biased, and the binary is in the code because people put the binary in the code. And I don't mean 0-1 binary, I mean male female binary. So I think, you know, approaching technology in like Freedom said, in a way that's combative, you know, combative is, it depends how you define it. When we're not gonna like punch you in the face, but still we're gonna push back a little bit, you know. So I think for me, I hesitate. I don't like the yin and yang language. Marjorie, I know you said that, and I appreciate that, because it's, you know, it's true, the kind of male heaviness in technology in general, especially what we see in the media and whatnot. But I think focusing on that middle ground, like that gender fluidity in technology and in art is really important to me. I'm not non-binary, but I still really appreciate that in between space in gender, and technology, frankly, like physical, digital. There's all sorts of in between, right? So it's not as hard defined as people make it out to be, or people want it to be. So I appreciate when people kind of tease out the gray area between the binary that technology so often paints as definitively black and white or male and female or digital, physical, whatever it is. So anybody else want to comment, or should we open it up to our public?
Yeah, let's open it up if anyone wants to, contribute a perspective or ask a follow-up question.
Great. Let me just put the question up here because I think that's helpful. So we're talking about how do we as artists approach technology from a feminist perspective, and we have 10 minutes, but just feel free to just weigh in, everybody. Get yourself off mute. Deborah, I see your hand up. And Fleur.
Yes, thank you for the invitation. I'm really glad to be here. I'm older, so I'm not very technically sophisticated. I know what I know, and I probably know more than I'm letting on, technically. So I hadn't really thought about it, technology. It was interesting. I'm glad you defined binary, because I was thinking 0101, but you said it's I forgot what you said. I'm sorry. It's not 10101. It's something else. What did you say, Christina?
I was speaking I was talking about the gender binary.
The gender
specifically,
binary,
as in male, female. Yeah.
Yes. And when you started the conversation, I was thinking about this quote from, I'm from Florida. I've been a longtime member of the Florida Native Plant Society. I have an artist background, way back when, but I've been through a lot of changes in my life. So in any event, I had, and at one of the conferences, there was a woman that spoke about, the rights of nature. All right. And the paragraph included, sort of criticizing in a way that, our society has been paternal. Civilizations have been paternal, over eons of time at this point. And so that has created an extreme imbalance. And the actual symbol of yin and yang is perfectly balanced. It's equal male, female, feminine, male energy. So thank you.
Thank you,
sometimes
Deborah.
you have to interject to get that balance. You have to interject the opposite, the opposing force, so that the balance will occur.
Keep pushing back, and raising our voices, and I was listening to something Buffy St. Marie said, and she's musician and singer and indigenous person, and she was basically shut down for like 25 years. And yes, and then so now she says, well, we can do things, but you don't fight, like with weapons, all right, because they'll outgun you. You do it basically through art, and healing.
Yeah,
so
that's great.
I thought that was really beautiful.
It was. Thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you.
Fleur, I'd love, thank you, Deborah.
Yes.
I'd love for you to jump in, Fleur.
Thank you. So I'm an engineer, I'm French. And so
Okay.
the gender gap in I was an engineer in electronical communication in France, and then a lobbyist. The gender was tremendous. In the school I was, École Polytechnique, we were 8% women. And
Okay.
I met in my work many other women. So for me, I had a kind of rejection and I went into art. I think that the way we could push science as a feminist perspective would be to push women to study these fields. And also I'm very happy to see your group, because as artists and women, we are not really expected to take the microphone to talk about science. So I'm very happy that you do that. And for me, my art is about this problem of invasion of technologies everywhere. And I think that the growth of biosciences is a huge opportunity for women to put in the front of everyone the impact of nature on nature and the remedies.
That's great, Fleur. Thank you for that. Glad to
Thank
have
you.
you here. Johnny, I see your hand up. I'd love to get you in here.
Yeah. Hi, everybody. I'm Johnny. Go by he, him pronouns. And I don't have the question up on the screen anymore, but the first thing that came to my mind when I read that question was, yeah, how do we as artists approach technology from a feminist perspective? I sort of took a liberal approach to the word artist and started thinking about female entrepreneurs in the tech space. Thinking about Whitney Wolf, the founder of Bumble. She created Bumble as originally an app where teen girls can receive compliments from one another, realizing how detrimental social media can be, and then using her knowledge of dating apps to then make a female sort of focused app where women are the ones to make the first move. And, you know, another sort of thing that came to my mind was safety features in apps for
Oh yeah, you are speaking
people,
my language, Johnny.
People in like abusive relationships. You know, there are ways to track locations using your phones, and it's sometimes difficult to turn that off without notifying that abuser or whomever. But I found that it was weird that a lot of these apps were focused on sort of protecting the women. Like we need these apps and these features, but it felt there's some discomfort when you come to realize that like these apps were made to protect women from the world that we live in. And I think with art, you know, with art and feminism, I think there's a way to sort of address the realities that can sort of bring forth this perspective to people who are unaware about it, or who sort of minimize these issues that are predominantly faced by women.
Yeah, thank you for that, Johnny.
It's such a good point you make, Johnny. And I was just reading yet another article today about the women in Iran who are engaged in this incredible counter-revolution, and the artwork that's coming out of that is extraordinary, and it's functioning just as you described. You know, it's the imagery that's coming out is giving voice to this entire generation of women who were voiceless. So it's, you know, we're seeing that play out in real time right now in Iran.
Yeah. And Johnny, I love your loose interpretation of artist. because I think artists, are so many things: artists, entrepreneurs, engineers. The list of hyphenated titles could go on forever. And I think more women in entrepreneurship, women and queer and non-binary people, we want more of them in entrepreneurship and business and art and everything, right? And I think the more like cross-sectional titles and everything, instead of these like hard and fast roles and titles, like I think the more we can embrace the kind of messiness and complexity of all the things that we do, including entrepreneurship, would just benefit all of society, not just the people making it. So thank you so much. I really appreciate your thoughts there. Oh, can you guys hear that? Time is up. Well, that's perfect timing. So let's move on to our next question. And if you are dying to say something, please feel free to jump into the chat if you don't get to say it out loud, or we can kind of save some time at the end too, if that makes sense, depending on how the timing goes. So let's look at our next question. Thank you for the conversation from our new friends there. That was great. So a theme in this exhibit that you'll see is some public art and monuments. We've been talking about this a lot as a collective this year at Feminist Futurist. So what is our vision? What is our visionary future of public art and monuments? There's a lot of talk of monuments in just globally in the media. We've got a big conversation about this in Boston around Faneuil Hall. When you think of monuments, think of big marble statues of dead white men, right? That's kind of what you think of as a monument, or at least that's what I think of. So how can we shift that narrative, and what is our vision for that future of public art and of monuments? And I think, Carolyn, I'd love to start with you.
Oh, yeah. Thanks. And thanks, everybody. Thanks, everybody in the audience. And thanks to the group for pulling this together. And thanks, Christina, for moderating everything so well. Yeah, I have a lot of thoughts about monuments. I've been a sculptor for 30 years. I've done public monuments, which were commissioned by committees, private committees, and civic committees. Naturally, a committee always has an agenda, in my view, since over 90% of America's public sculpture is of men, mainly white men. That agenda is militaristic, often, again, in my view, propagandistic. And recent events, fairly recent events in the Black Lives Matter movement, I think showed very clearly how important it is for a community to be able to enact their rage and their sorrow on a physical monument, which is in effect an effigy of an oppressor. And I wanted to add that Karen Menino gave me some notes, so I kind of have two heads today. She has a lot of thoughts about this also. So in our discussion, we think that in the future, monuments can really better serve society by being created collectively and temporarily by groups acting collaboratively in real and virtual spaces. So in our exhibit, for example, we have several works presented on the Huberlay digital publishing platform. So if you have the Huberlay,
in augmented reality.
Yeah, right, okay.
Sorry, go ahead. I just want to say it's augmented reality.
Yes,
ahead.
thank you. Good. It's not the first term that comes to my mind for some reason, but so you can see these sort of public visions at our show. Even if you're not in the gallery, you can read QR codes in the windows of the show and see these different images. Some of them are 3D, some are animated. Some of them are static digital objects that are geolocated around the gallery. And Karen suggests that deploying physical monuments in a public space, essentially even perhaps making a civic space available for creating these communal monuments. She suggests that this will better represent people of color by deploying temporary groups or aggregations of all kinds of meaningful objects, adding more color, adding fashion and clothing, using indigenous materials that may have inherent meaning that's not obvious to the culture, the general, mainstream culture that we know of in America today. And we also have been talking a lot about using 3D printed objects to create these aggregate and temporary outdoor monuments or memorials. The 3D materials are potentially indefinitely recyclable and cheap to produce, and they can be of continued relevance to a community. Just because of the temporary nature of the installation, things can be moved and changed and refreshed and taken away completely. So that's really been our jumping off point for doing a lot of, it's been a jumping off point for me in doing my personal work. So I'm eager to hear what everybody else is up to along these lines.
Go ahead, Marjorie.
It kind of puts me in mind of the graffiti explosion in the 80s, which kind of made public art accessible to so many people, to the point where, the graffiti became a commodity, go figure. But in its early days, it was done surreptitiously and illegally. And there was something, I was in New York in the early 80s, and there was something so fresh and even mystical about it. It was just beautiful and real and accessible to everybody. And I think that might have started the dialogue about public art, and it might have fueled the fact that public art has become so prominent in discussions about art in general. And I think it's a beginning, and then as Carolyn was saying about the quality of the monuments, people are no longer satisfied, people are not, they're not buying that the only thing worth celebrating is something martial, so I think it's changing pretty quickly.
Yeah, I would add to that, Marjorie, that in the same way that graffiti in the 70s and 80s was subversive, I think that the way that we're thinking about monuments with these tools is also subversive, because a traditional monument, not only is it about, memorializing someone who had a certain kind of power, but it's also about commerce and about creating value in a space, or perceived value, which that's going to get us, we'll get to that in question 3, but so there's something very incredibly democratizing, and I think like incredibly exciting about an app like Coverlay which allows anyone to take a piece of artwork and geo-position it anywhere. And then anyone with a smartphone, which, I mean, that's not fully democratic right there, but it's more democratic than having work in a space where lots of people can't access it or are not welcome. So anyone with a phone can access that work in that location. Anyone can make an enormous, 300-foot tall monument and plop it somewhere. So yeah, and also the idea, like with Carolyn's work, of making monuments out of ephemera, which is, I think, kind of expressing a kind of humility, that even the most, hard surfaced steel and marble monument will eventually be gone. And Carolyn makes these pieces out of fabric and paper and other kind of vulnerable materials. And there's something really subversive about making a monument out of those kinds of materials, because it draws attention to the fact that it will all vanish at some point.
And I like what you say about hoverlay freedom, because, it keeps occurring to me that we could do just guerrilla installations of, crazy monuments all around Boston. And we could geolocate things anywhere we want to. Of course, as you say, you need a smartphone to view it. And I have, I guess I have a couple of issues with that, but hopefully.
Yeah, it's not perfect.
Yeah.
For sure.
There's actually a show at the installation space right here in North Adams around ARs, and North Adams is kind of it's an up and coming place, but it still isn't there, and yet they have sites all over the city where people can take their smartphones and see a monument. So yeah, I mean, great equalizer.
Christina,
Yeah.
did you want to weigh in on this topic?
I do. Thank you, Frida. To share, so I was showing Carolyn's sculpture that's in the exhibit right before this. This is Freedom's piece, Mind, which I think we'll talk more about, but this is definitely like a monument that's in, this is at Jamaica Pond right now. And then I just wanted to share my two monuments in the exhibit right now are monuments to rest, which is the opposite of our capitalist society. So I became a parent in 2020, and I had a baby, and the pandemic happened, and it was tough. So I had a stressful couple of years, as we all did. And I think what I've really appreciated coming out of that is a focus on rest and, taking care of yourself. And so I learned a lot from having a kid, but also learning to still focus on myself in order to be able to focus on my child as well. So I have these monuments to rest. They're videos in augmented reality of me resting in bed. That's the video inside the gallery, and outside in a plastic Adirondack chair that's outside the gallery. So I think I would love, because most monuments are monuments to like productivity and conquering and, whatever form of colonialism is, being celebrated in that monument. But I would love if monuments were more about celebrating like quieter things and, rest and parenthood and art, artists, like the making itself and the messing up, like the failure of it, as opposed to the triumph. I think I wish there was more of a discussion around that in monuments. Let me see. So I feel like we could talk about that a little more. I don't know, Carolyn or Marjorie or Freedom, do you have anything else to say, or do you want to open it up?
Yeah, let's open it up.
Yeah.
All right, friends, what do you think? Let me get the question up for you. It'll take me a minute. But feel free to just jump in. Do we have any? Yeah,
I just
just
looked.
Angela says that. Oh, go ahead, Fleur.
Oh yeah,
Oh, I didn't
I
hear the
don't want to
question. Sorry.
interrupt. I find at first I found the idea a bit invisibilizing people, the invisible monument. So I was a bit puzzled, but actually you're right with comparing it to tags, and also I adhere to the idea of getting slowly with humble art that you have to go and find for yourself, but that are available for everybody and who are addressing ideas that we don't see in other monuments. I find it great.
Thank you for that, Fleur. Yeah, I know it's weird to think of monuments in virtual space. And actually, we have work in virtual reality too, in part of the exhibit. So it's, you know, virtual space and also augmented reality, like mixed reality space. I think having these monuments in that space, like I think it was Carolyn was saying, like we have these like hidden monuments, but they're also a lot more accessible, right? Like you can have this virtual monument that you can access from anywhere, and that's a really powerful tool.
Yeah, and it's not static either. I mean, it can be, you can have it one place one day and one place another day, and it can change, you know. I mean, you can follow the morphing of a monument from one aspect to another. I mean, it's just, it gives a whole new vision to the idea of a monument, and the fluidity that's possible is very forward thinking, and it's just in its infancy. That's what amazes me. You know, there's so much more that will happen even in the past month or so. You know, you see more and more of it.
Yeah, it's also the museum or the gallery in the streets. So
Yeah.
it's really fascinating.
Nancy, was your hand up? Come on in. This is Nancy Hayes. She's also in our exhibit.
I'm just thinking about, but thank you for doing this, by the way, and thank you for not making me part of the panel. Because I just was thinking, I don't really want to talk. I just want to hear. But what I'm hearing and what I'm thinking about is celebrating our commonality and using monuments to celebrate what brings us together instead of what breaks us apart. It's there, you know, what is a monument? It's, you know, I think of something big, I think of a huge symbol, but it's an opportunity to break down our differences and celebrate what we share. And that's gender, race, ideology, everything. Because underneath, you know, we all go to the supermarket and we all get food, and there's lots of things that we all do and share as part of the human experience. And that's what I'd like to see celebrated. Thanks for doing this.
Thanks.
I'm seeing a series of shopping cart monuments.
Does anybody else want to speak on that? We've got, I'm not necessarily like able to see everybody's hand. So if you want to just jump in, feel free.
Virginia.
Yeah,
Hi,
Virginia.
yeah, I just want to say that, you know, that talking about earlier about what most of the monuments we have are and what they celebrate men and those achievements that they have. And yet now we're talking about things like food and things that have to do with almost with domesticity in a way, trying to celebrate that. And that all I could keep thinking about is the irony of the fact that at one time we celebrated those things that had to do with war and, you know, macho power and all that. And yet those men would, most of them would be nothing without the women in their lives who supported them and, you know, in many cases. So I just, that whole irony kind of struck me, and I'm really glad we're talking about these kinds of monuments as opposed to those kinds of, you know, monuments. So thank you.
That's really interesting.
I also want to say, you know, I feel like we are sort of going down a like a dangerous place. I feel like we're like male bashing, which I don't know. We don't want to do that.
No.
But I want to say that while we don't want to celebrate like, or I'll speak for myself, like I don't want to see monuments celebrating like military conquests and stuff like that. But I do want to see monuments about resistance, right? And for some reason, when you were talking about food and, you know, monuments to food, I thought of Cesar Chavez. And I was like, yes, I would love, you know, and there are monuments to Cesar Chavez in California, but more monuments like that, you know, about people rising up and resisting oppression, you know. So that is an achievement and a conquest in itself, but a different kind, right? So I think celebrating those types of achievements is also what we want to see.
Yeah, and
Maybe those kinds of
exactly.
monuments wouldn't
Yeah, go
even
ahead.
look, oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Karen.
Maybe those kinds of monuments wouldn't even look like what we currently think of as a monument. You know, maybe they would look like a field or a park or a place to sit and talk. So that's, you know.
And I think it's about, you know, it's not about bashing anyone really. It's just more about a thoughtful critique of what you're looking at when you see a large, expensive monument in a public space, critiquing the origins of that, the origins of it in thought, the origins of it in labor, you know, like one of our audience members who just talked about the women who supported the men who went off to war, like who were the laborers who, you know, put up that monument. And if we're talking about certain eras, you know, there was slave labor involved in some of the monuments in this country. So yeah, so it's about the thoughtful critique, which is such a crucial part of this work.
Yeah. And a monument carries so much power. I mean, just look at when they took some of the offensive monuments down in certain parts of the country, the divisiveness that occurred from that action, you know, between those people who understood the, you know, toxicity of having a monument that was questionable, you know, in someone's town square versus those who thought it was breaching their rights as individuals and destroying history, et cetera, et cetera. So it's a very powerful tool.
Yep. And I was just thinking, you know, the prompt is, or the question or theme is, you know, what's our visionary future of public art and monuments? And I think what we're sort of dancing around and what I want to say out loud is that my visionary future of public art, including monuments, is, you know, monuments that do not uphold white supremacy and actually tear it down, you know, celebrate the people that are doing the hard work of tearing down white supremacy. So monuments like that, we need more of.
Yeah.
Um,
Monuments of action.
yeah, monuments of action too. And I think monuments that don't necessarily celebrate individuals, and that's part of what we've talked about as a collective is monuments to ideas, monuments to movements, not individuals, because even those individuals, there's a whole community of people behind them. What about all those people?
Yeah.
Any other thoughts from our group? I'd love to get any other thoughts from our attendees.
I just wanted to thank you, Christina, for raising that the monuments would be much healthier if they were designed, to celebrate community. And because we all need community.
Mm-hmm.
And health, mental health and physical health is, I appreciated your resting.
Thank you.
Yes, I thought that was great.
Thank you.
I've been learning how to really just kind of do nothing.
Yeah, me too.
Hard,
It's harder
isn't
than
it?
it sounds.
So.
Thanks for that, Deb. Okay. I also want to mention someone posted in the chat, can we see the work, these digital works online? And you can see them through the Hoverlay app on your own smartphone, but you do need the app. So that if you download the Hoverlay app, I will be sending out the links to AR works in the exhibit. I'll send a follow-up email after this, probably tomorrow, with links to the AR work so that you guys can see that in the comfort of your own home, even if you can't go to the physical gallery space.
Christina, it looks like Johnny had his hand up. So just
Oh,
want to
Johnny, yeah, definitely. Go for it.
Yeah, thank you, Freedom. When I was thinking about monuments and hearing, that even AR sort of monuments aren't completely accessible, I got to thinking of the Vessel in New York City, in the Hudson Yards, how that was sort of a structure built in a very wealthy part of Manhattan. I mean, Manhattan is almost unlivable for the average person, but how much disdain it got from people for being inaccessible, and for just being a massive project. I think it was about like $200 million for something that the community really doesn't need. And I wish there would be a future in which monuments could be voted on by a community that could be, complex an idea and be there for the betterment of that community as opposed to just a spectacle.
Yeah, I like that idea of the community actually having more of a say, because that doesn't seem to be, that maybe is happening more now, but not to the degree that it should, I'm sure. That's a great point. Thank you, Johnny.
Yeah.
All right, shall we move on? I don't know if you heard my timer go off. Move on to the third question here. Let me pull it up. All right, how do we perceive value? So this one is really tied heavily to the theme of currency in our exhibit that's up at Cyberarts Gallery now. How do we perceive value? How do we change the way art and objects are valued and exchanged in society? And Freedom's going to start us off on this one.
Okay. And Christina, can you show the slide that has the painting on it? Because then I can talk about that. So yeah, when we were, when we had decided on this theme of currency, I was thinking about value and how artworks are valued, and we were having these really interesting discussions about NFTs. And I decided I wanted to create a work that would have its value reflected in a few different ways. And I was thinking about, what do I own that's of value? And I thought about this ring that had been in a box in a closet behind it, some other boxes for like 20 years. This diamond ring that was given to me by my ex-mother-in-law as a gift. And at the time that I received it as a gift was probably, I think, the most valuable thing I had ever owned up until that point. I didn't grow up with a car. I grew up in a rental apartment. So I was given this valuable object, which as soon as I looked at it, I thought, well, that's probably a conflict diamond, because it was mined probably in the 1920s or the 1930s. It was a family heirloom. And it immediately became this problem, like it became something valuable that needed to be protected. It needed to be insured. I was wearing it when I was like sanding stuff, and the stone would get loose and the jeweler would scold me. The sister of my ex-mother-in-law was jealous that I had received the diamond because it never went to her because she was the younger sister. Like, it just, this tiny little object had so much kind of history and meaning kind of compressed into it and kind of hooked onto it. So that, that's what I wanted to make a piece about, and thought about the idea of making a painting which is sort of adequate as a painting, and then in the sale of the painting, attaching the diamond to the sale to boost the value of the painting. So this painting is for sale. You get the diamond too. And not only that, you get an NFT representation of the painting. And all of that is for sale. Plus you can go to Jamaica Pond and see the hoverlay representation of the ring hovering over the pond. And if you pay for all of that and get that awesome deal, then there's the hoverlay representation. The money from that flows through me back out to a nonprofit in the Boston area that lost money during the recent crypto slide. So the piece is really about drawing attention to how value gets created in our minds and how value flows through channels of commerce. Even channels of commerce where, if we're talking about food, most of the time, the food that we're eating, the value of that food is very obvious and kind of easy to gauge. But there are these other channels where the value is kind of distorted and fabricated. And NFTs seem to be a world very much about that. So I just wanted to make a piece that would hit all of the parts of the cycle of created value, and then bringing it all the way back around to being able to use the proceeds from a sale to help an organization that actually needs help. No one has purchased the work yet.
Still available.
It's still available. And it's such a bargain. So,
Brilliant.
And where this comes in for me on the feminist side of things is, I was reading a little bit in preparation for this discussion about first wave feminism, second wave feminism. And we touched a little bit on the idea of second wave feminism, which was partly about like subversive use of materials and representation. And I think this third wave, for me at least, the way I'm experiencing it is about disrupting systems, like thinking about a global experience and thinking about channels of influence and, you know, where can we push on those boundaries, and where can we subvert and change the way systems are kind of playing out, like the machinery of systems. So,
That's great,
yeah.
Freedom. Thank you.
So-
Sorry, Freedom, are you done?
yeah, I'm done for now.
I didn't mean to interrupt you. I
Yeah, no,
apologize.
no, and you guys should
go ahead.
please talk about, you know, because we had these great discussions about NFTs when we were preparing.
I
for
know
the
we
show.
haven't talked much about NFTs. I meant to actually bring that up in the first question. Is that's sort of a new Web3 and NFTs and the metaverse. It's all sort of a new world that I hope more women and queer people and non-binary people are part of, so that we can create it as a more just a more equal playing field for everybody. But I was actually about to ask Marjorie to jump in, because I would love for you to weigh in on this topic.
Thank you. I appreciate it. It's kind of, I'm just still sort of riding on what Freedom just said about, you know, the process of one step and another, all wrapped up in her presentation. I'm just thinking that's amazing. So, from where I'm sitting, the more you place a value on a piece of artwork, the more you impose value and commodity on art in general, the more structures you are setting up to contain its creativity. If you can imagine, if we didn't do that, if buying and selling art wasn't, such a heavy part of the experience, in our society right now, people wouldn't approach their work as being so precious and dear that they would be afraid to go anywhere with it. Lots of people are so intent on falling into the structures and the powers that be right now that the people get afraid to take it any further or venture forward with their work. So to me, the way I've always looked at it is that the value is in the non-value. The value is in the actual expression and creativity and stretching your mind as far as you can without the limitations of buying and selling.
That's great, Marjorie. And I think we were talking about value, but I think I actually added exchange in here. So I don't know if you guys noticed that. So value, but then exchange, right? Because you're talking about the buying and selling. And I think that's the currency that we talk about. That's actual money and value in dollars, right? Or whatever currency, whatever monetary currency, even crypto, whatever. But I think part of the exchange that I was really interested in from this show was actually work by Marjorie and Karen, who did some very interesting work with artificial intelligence. And I know, Marjorie, it was your first time working with AI. I'm not sure if it was Karen.
Oh, yeah.
Karen's work is the artwork behind Freedom and Carolyn, by the way. That's Karen Menino's work. So Marjorie and Karen had these conversations with artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if you could talk about that for a minute, Marjorie.
Oh, I'd love to. Yeah. It occurs to me, when I'm looking at the AI's rendition of the titles of my artwork, which is how I approached it, that it's really not too far from what I do. I've seen, like, in the past, few months or so, a lot of AI generated artwork, and I am just in love with the whole thing. I know it's scary to a lot of people, and I can understand that. It'll never take the place of, for me, my hands and touching and working with paint, but I take a look at this AI generated thing right now, that what I did was put in Asleep in the Core of the Earth, which is the title of my painted piece. And I just, fooled around with some filters and kept trying until I found something that I felt was close enough to what I'm doing. And then it occurred to me that, and I haven't done this yet, but if I give that AI a long explanation of what that artwork is, like the one on top is my painted work, a coiled up snake with a diamond pattern, red, blue, and yellow, surrounded by worm-like creatures, and I've tried it a couple of times to see if it would come up with anything that was, even remotely like mine. And it needs a little work, it needs a little work, but
Yes,
but,
AI needs a little work.
and then I'm looking at what Karen Menino did for Fashion Week with her AI. I'm like, it is so visually stunning. I mean, we haven't seen anything like this, and when you draw the line, is this AI, sentient, or is it a combination of all of our experiences, and what is this that's going on? Where is it coming from? It's unlike anything, maybe Hieronymus Bosch, was the closest we've got to it, because some of it is kind of, some of it's a little eerie.
Yeah.
But it's all kind of eerie. But we're in its infancy. This is its infancy. And I understand why people feel threatened by technology and art, why AIs in particular. And I understand that people, don't understand that eventually, maybe in my vision is like, I've always had these visions of people like creating artwork in space, or, connecting planets with filaments of light. And I mean, who knows where this is going?
That sounds fun. Let's do that.
I mean, it's just.
Oh, no? Okay.
What?
I like your idea of connecting the planets with filaments.
Yeah, I mean, we're just stepping into this realm. We're infants. We haven't even gotten up and started walking yet. I'd love to be like reincarnated and see what happens, because I feel like, I'm gonna miss it, but.
Yeah. Carolyn, I would love to get your thoughts on this before we open it up to our participants, because we're actually kind of winding down here, but I'd love to get your thoughts on this one.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I mean, I have a lot of thoughts about the commodification of art and the commodification of an object, and art used as investments and, removed from public view and stored away in storage facilities, as a lot of really high-end collectors are doing now. So, I mean, but just really briefly, I guess I would say part of my interest in public art really stems from the fact that I want the experience of looking at art to be free. I want making art to be free. I want people to be able to walk up and see something for free. I agree completely with what Marjorie said about graffiti. New York in the 80s was grim and economically depressed, and kind of a horrible, scary place to be in some ways. And then you would just see this amazing, colorful art come out of the subway at you, and it just completely changed. It could change your whole day. It could change your whole perspective on what was possible and what really, again, before graffiti became commodified in itself, just sort of what the experience of pure art was like, without having to buy and sell it or pay to go into a museum. So
Mhm.
those are my
Thank you for that,
disjointed
Carolyn.
thoughts.
Can I just
No,
add
no,
one
it's
more
great.
thing
Thank
to that?
Yes.
And Christina, I threw in a slide at the very end of Karen's Indonaut that she made with the Midjourney AI.
Oh, cool. Let's check it out.
I think one of the reasons why, I mean, as futurists, you know, we have an interest in what's coming and technology, but as feminists, I think one of the reasons why in our group we're so excited about the possibilities of working with the AI is it's a collaboration, you know, like, so these AI platforms or engines or entities are they're incredibly rich, and there's a lot of content and information to be tapped into there, and we don't perceive it as threatening. I certainly don't. I find it incredibly exciting and invigorating to spend time with these tools and, you know, try different word prompts. And so this is one of Karen's pieces that she made for Boston Fashion Week. She's been calling them Indonauts. That's a reference to her ethnicity and her heritage. And they're so beautiful. And yeah, so I think that the feminist space that's opened up by these tools is really exciting, and it's what draws us to them. We're not scared of collaborating, and we get so much energy from it. So yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you, Freedom. So I want to open it up to our participants for a few minutes. I just need like a minute at the end to wrap up. So if anybody wants to talk about value in art and value in exchange, especially in relationship to the technology that we're using, that would be great. But it doesn't have to be about technology, obviously. Anybody? We can keep talking about it.
There's a question in the chat about our group, the structure of our group. I guess
Is our
the way,
group,
yeah, Carolyn, do you want to take that one? The question is our group open?
I think it's the way it's evolved is that different people kind of show with us sometimes and then don't show with us at other times. And a lot depends on the theme and the venue and the subject matter of the show, and you know, what audiovisual technology is available in any particular gallery. So I think it's a very changing group. I mean, that's really all I can say. I don't know if we really ever have a process, do we? Were any of you interviewed extensively before joining, or did you have to submit an application or a resume? No,
Just a proposal for the piece.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it, you know, like what.
yeah, I think we're
how
pretty
does your
open.
work align?
Yeah, so if you want to be in
go ahead.
touch, reach out to us
Yeah,
for sure. We're all on Instagram. We're all Googleable in some way.
We are almost out of time now. So if anybody has any final thoughts on our theme of value and art, feel free. I think I'm gonna just go ahead and just start to wind down here so I don't go over. But I just want to say thank you, everybody, for joining. We really appreciate everybody that took the time to listen to us and to talk to us, especially the people that shared, with the group. We really appreciate your thoughts and your time. We do have a website and Instagram if you want to follow us. Sorry, that's tiny. I didn't get a chance to make it bigger yet. We're Feminist Futurist on Instagram, and you can look us up at feministfuturist.com to follow what we're doing. And as we mentioned, Karen Menino and AK Liesenfeld have some really amazing work at Boston Fashion Week starting this weekend, I believe. So Karen's got the Indonauts that we saw that she created with AI, and AK Liesenfeld is a VR artist, and AK did some cool work with some fashion in virtual reality. And Freedom put this readings list together if you want to read up on some of these topics. I think, there's some good reading in here. We have a lot more. If you go to the exhibit, there's actually free books, feminist futurist books that you can take. So that's another reason to go check it out in person. Any last words, anybody? I think that's it. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining. We really appreciate it. I will send out some more notes tomorrow. I have some notes for things that were asked for, and the recording will be out at some point, sometime. Okay. Thank you so much, everybody. Really appreciate it.